friends. We're reading Little House in the Big Woods, and we're in the chapter called Summertime, and we're on page 183. And where we left off, we know that Laura was going to do something naughty. She had had visitors all day. Let's see what happened. Aunt Lottie had gone, and Laura and Mary were tired and cross. Cross is another old-fashioned word for angry. They were at the woodpile gathering a pan of chips to kindle the fire in the morning. Those are wood chips. They always hated to pick up chips, but every day they had to do it. Tonight they hated it even more. Laura grabbed the biggest chip, and Mary said, "I don't care. Aunt Lottie likes my hair best anyway. Golden hair is prettier than brown." Laura's throat swelled tight, and she could not speak. She could not speak and was so upset that very quickly she reached out and slapped Mary's face. Then she heard Pa say, "Come here, Laura." She went slowly, dragging her feet. Pa was sitting just inside the door. He had seen her slap Mary. "You remember," Pa said, "I told you girls that you must never strike each other." Laura began, "But Mary said—" "That makes no difference," said Pa. "It is what I say that you must mind." And then he took a strap down from the wall to spank Laura. Laura sat on a chair in the corner and sobbed. When she stopped sobbing, she sulked. The only thing in the world to be glad about was that Mary had to fill the chip pan all by herself. At last, when it was getting dark, Pa said again, "Come here, Laura." His voice was kind, and when Laura came, he took her on his knee and hugged her close. She sat in the crook of his arm, her head against his shoulder, and his long brown whiskers partly covering her eyes, and everything was all right again. She told Pa all about it, and she asked him, "You don't like golden hair better than brown, do you?" Pa's blue eyes shone down at her, and he said, "Well, Laura, my own hair is brown." She had not thought of that. Pa's hair was brown, and his whiskers were brown, and she thought brown was a very lovely color. But she was glad that Mary had to gather all the chips. In the summer evenings, Pa did not tell stories or play the fiddle. Summer days were long, and he was tired after he had worked hard all day in the fields. Ma was busy too. Laura and Mary helped her weed the garden, and they helped her feed the calves and the hens. They gathered the eggs, and they helped make cheese. When the grass was tall and thick in the woods, and the cows were giving plenty of milk, that was the time to make cheese. Somebody must kill a calf, for cheese could not be made without the rennet, and rennet is the lining of a young calf's stomach. The calf must be very young, so that it had never eaten anything but milk. Laura was afraid that Pa must kill one of the little calves in the barn. They were so sweet. One was fawn-colored and one was red, and their hair was so soft and their large eyes so wondering. Laura's heart beat fast when Ma talked to Pa about making cheese. Pa would not kill either of his calves because they were heifers and would grow into cows. So we went to Grandpa's and to Uncle Henry's to talk about the cheese making, and Uncle Henry said he would kill one of his calves. There would be enough rennet for Aunt Polly and Grandma and Ma. So Pa went again to Uncle Henry's and came back with a piece of the little calf's stomach. It was like a piece of soft grayish-white leather, all ridged and roughed on one side. When the cows were milked at night, Ma set the milk away in pans. In the morning she skimmed off the cream to make into butter later. Then, when the morning's milk had cooled, she mixed it with the skimmed milk and set it all on the stove to heat. A bit of rennet, tied in a cloth, was soaking in warm water. When the milk was heated enough, Ma squeezed every drop of water from the rennet in the cloth, and then she poured the water into the milk. She stirred it well and left it in a warm place by the stove. In a little while it thickened into a smooth, quivery mass. With a long knife, Ma cut this mass into little squares and let it stand while the curd separated from the whey. Then she poured it all into a cloth and let the thin, yellowish whey drain out. When no more whey dripped from the cloth, Ma emptied the curd into the pan and salted it, turning and mixing it well. Laura and Mary were always there, helping all they could. They loved to eat the bits of cheese curd when Ma was salting it. It squeaked in their teeth. There's Ma making cheese. Under the cherry tree outside the back door, Pa had put up the board to press the cheese on. He had cut 2 grooves the length of the board and laid the board on blocks, one end a little higher than the other. Under the lower end stood an empty pail. Ma put her wooden cheese hoop on the board, spread a clean wet cloth all over the inside of it, and filled it with heaping full with chunks of salted curd. She covered this with another clean wet cloth and laid on top of it a round board, cut small enough to go inside the cheese hoop. when she lifted a heavy rock on top of the board. All day long, the round board settled slowly under the weight of the rocks, and whey pressed out and ran down the grooves of the board into the pail. So she's got a board, you can see the round board right here. She's got her cheese curds in here. This whole thing is lined with cloth. And then she's going to put this piece of wood on top of her cheese curd with a big rock to weigh it down and squish out all of the whey, which is going to run into this bucket. And that's how she's making cheese. We're going to stop there for today, but we'll read some more about the cheese making tomorrow because it's quite a process.